Hello, and welcome back to Politico's Competitive Europe Summit. My name is Jan Chański, and I'm a senior policy editor at Politico, and I'm in charge of mobility, and I'm also the defense editor. And defense is what we're going to be looking at in this panel, and the name of the panel is A New Era for Defense, Will Procurement Secure Europe's Autonomy? And we're going to be talking about procurement and the defense ramp-up in light of the existential threat that is posed by Russia. The risk of war is real. I was just at a conference in Warsaw a couple of days ago, and there Prime Minister Tusk, in the wake of the overflight by the Russian drones, did say that there is a strange form, but some form of war is starting with Russia. Coupled with that is the problems, looming collapse of the traditional alliance with the United States. I think anybody who watched that frankly bizarre speech by Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth yesterday to the gathered admirals and generals of the U.S. military should have no illusion that that something is different with America. In a sense, that means that Europe has to stand alone, and the question is, how fast will it be able to do that? And does it have the resources to be able to stand alone in terms of defense? We've got a great panel to tackle just those issues. So starting from my left, we have Klaus Welle. Oh, where's my thing? Klaus Welle, the chairman of the Academic Council of the Wilfried Martens Center for European Studies. Then Marie-Agnes Strack-Zimmermann, who is an MEP with Renew Europe and chair of the European Parliament's SEDE committee, which is in charge of defense. And then Camille Grand, the Secretary General of ASD, representing European aerospace, security, and defense industries. I'd like to start with Marie-Agnes to see if we can generate a little bit of news. The trilogues are ongoing on EDIP, the $1.5 billion injection into the European defense industry. Can you bring us up to speed? The hope was that this would be resolved in the next few weeks. Are we reaching that, and what are the big stumbling blocks to getting there?
Thank you very much. First of all, I need more sunglasses than...
it's very bright.
Yeah, it's very bright, but it's okay. I think this topic is a bright one. So anyway, we are on a good way after 2 years. I mean, for me, I'm here now for 1 year, and EDIP, it's not a new idea. And now I would say we are really close by to have a possibility going on. The question is, or the question will be less the Commission or the members of Parliament. And especially in our Security Committee, we are 42 colleagues from many different countries, but we are really close, without 2 persons, but anyway, sorry that they are from Germany, but it could happen. Nevertheless, the thing will be what the Council will do, because we know the Council, there are 27 countries. So the ambassador of Denmark, he has really a job to do, but I'm really optimistic because, very simple, we could see what happens now. And there is no discussion anymore. Is it a dangerous situation? What could be happen? Oh, come on! It's not so worse. Be cool and stay calm. No, the reality arrived 3.5 years ago, but now it's really arrived Europe, in the heart of Europe. And so I'm optimistic that we will find a solution. And so it's very important not only for the big countries. Also for the smaller countries, it's really very important for their industry, because for people living there, we have to find a possibility talking to the public opinion. And you could talk to public opinion if they realized that to invest in military equipment, it's also in investing in security for civil questions. And there are jobs, and you create jobs. So it's not only a question of the big countries, it's for the small countries and also for countries who are interested in joining this program, even they are not member of the European Parliament.
And so you've got a large, as you were saying, a large committee, MEPs from across Europe. Do you find that there are deep differences in urgency, in the desire, in the willingness to spend money. The further you are from Russia, if you're in Spain or Portugal or Italy, is it just less pressing that there's other economic needs, and it's much more difficult to convince people from those regions that this is serious, or is that changing?
I think it's better now. It's true. It's a question of where is your country, the geographical situation. Of course, if you have a Russian border, for example, our Finnish friends with 1,500 kilometer Russian border, you know what I'm talking about. But it's true, it has something to do. But if I always said Spain and Portugal, my Portuguese colleagues say stop, don't say both countries, because I think the problem is yes, the Spanish colleagues are far away. You know, we have also the discussion in NATO about the 5%. But anyway, I think that our job is, you know, to go forward. I mean, it's not possible to wait for this country who is slow. We have to go forward, and I'm sure that everybody really realizes that we have no time anymore, and that Putin, I mean, all this trouble we could see, all the drones, I mean, it's a huge theater. You know, it's a proof of what happens in Europe. Are they nervous? Yes, there are. Discussions, yes, discussions all over. But first of all, it's a test if we are really able to fight against this kind of drones, for example. And it's really terrible because, you know, we know as politicians who are working in this security topics for years, it's not a new thing. We have in Germany, all over in Europe, when we educate Ukraine soldiers, all over drones. I mean, it's not a new thing, but now there are many of them, and we find a solution. So this pressure, it's very important for us to realize that we have to react, and I'm positive because, you know, if somebody says, take your time, then he really doesn't see what happens and what's going on.
Great, thanks. A big issue is, and we hear this through the national financial programs, and then especially with what the EU is trying to do, is to boost Europe's defense industry. I was, maybe Camille and Klaus, I'll get you to hop in on this. Does Europe have too fragmented a defense industry to be able to step up to this sort of thing? What procedures do we use to ensure that there's better cooperation among member countries and to better integrate the defense industry to be able to do that?
My view is that, and we've been working on this with the Martin Center over the last 2 years, cooperation we've had for a very long time, but what we really would need is an internal market for defense products. And there's a study from the European Parliamentary Research Service, I think from 2023, saying that we are wasting 30% of expenditure because we don't have an internal market on defense. So if I take the German figures, now in this budgetary year, the expectation is 80 billion for procurement, 30% wasted is 25 billion euro. We can't do that anymore. And honestly, if I would be the French state president, which fortunately for me and for France, I'm not. But if I would be the French state president, this is the time to take an initiative, speak to Friedrich Merz and say, let's create that single market in defense. Because otherwise we will have a building up of the German defense industry, which is maybe not good also from an overall European perspective. So France could profit, the other ones could profit, Germany would spend much less, and Europe would profit because we have more integration.
Maybe to add to this a few things. I mean, first of all, indeed, and Klaus was alluding to this, one of the problems is the fragmentation of demand. So there is a bit of a back and forth there of saying industry is too fragmented when the demand is fragmented. So we have 26 militaries, 30 if you count in the NATO environment, that each come with their requirements, and sometimes it's a bit ridiculous to see how those requirements are diverging on things that should be very, very straightforward. And I think this is one element. Then some form of consolidation of industries has already happened in several domains. It's also taking place. I think if we can, the issue is to strike the right balance between some healthy competition, which is, I think, good for the customer to be offered a range of products and a range of options, and some consolidation of that offer so that we don't have multiple programs running. I would just inject maybe a dose of caution on some of the numbers that are floated sometimes, because when people say we have 10 times more tanks than the US, it often confuses legacy equipment, current production, and all of that. I think it's not as clear-cut as it is. So I think it's really important to be very accurate, and there are enormous nuances depending if you're talking about the naval sector, the aerospace sector, the land sector, and where there, in some instances, there are clear European champions that already exist. In others, we still see a fragmentation with each country or each country with some solid defense industry wanting to preserve their national champions.
So politically, that's a big issue. And if you've got, I was talking to the chairman of Saab in Warsaw a couple of days ago, and so his line on cooperating on any big multinational next generation fighter jet programs is that Saab has to retain the ability to be a final producer of an OEM of jets. That's logical from the Swedish and Saab viewpoint, perhaps less logical from a European viewpoint. So how do you go about ensuring there's going to be winners and losers on that sort of thing? So how does that get finessed politically for European interest to override national interest?
No, I mean, that is a very interesting case, because if you look at the number of players that are capable of producing a fighter jet in Europe, you have, two, three maybe, depending on how you count. That's the same thing in the US, by the way. So it's not as if we were horribly not integrated and so on. So at the moment, we do have two or three, also if you bring in the UK into the equation, we have two or three major primes that are willing and capable of doing this. So the issue is, how do you build cooperation in that particular context? Retaining know-how is sometimes a demand from the states. It's often a demand from the companies as well to make clear that they want to keep that ability, and that is absolutely fine. The issue is, how do you move from there into major projects of cooperation once you move forward? And there, I think we can do better at facilitating cooperation, making sure that we have not only interoperable, but cooperation that enable a large participation of the ecosystem and all of that. And that is where the EU and the national governments can probably move to the next phase.
Mary Agnes, is that a role for the EU? Should Brussels step in at that point? I think that.
I'm not sure. The question is, for example, the FCAS.
Yeah.
So France and Germany try to work together, I would say. It's not so easy to work together, that's the reality. And to build or create a new fighter generation, you just said it, Germany and France, France and Germany, on the other hand, Sweden and Great Britain. I mean, it's really unbelievable. Now, of course we have to work together. And the question will be, if this fighter is ready for takeoff, to make it simple, it is an answer of the challenges which we could see now, because when this project started, how many years ago?
10 years.
10 years, yes, 10 years. So and then you could see what happens in Ukraine. You could see that we have huge problems in question of drones. 10 years ago, drone was definitely no topic. Now we could see, and the first time when we saw it was in the war Azerbaijan Armenia, and you could see that this weapon make a decision. So we now find a way, but how could I say, we have to realize that maybe sometimes, I wouldn't say it, sometimes you have to stop something and you have to find a new idea, because we have a totally different situation if you compare it 10 years ago.
In all fairness, the FCAS had and still has a very strong dimensions of having it's a future combat system. It has a whole dimension of unmanned systems that accompanies the fighters and all of that. So I think it's cooperation is always challenging and can be very difficult. There are ups and downs in the cycle of such a project, but I think but those long-term engagements, and whether we're looking at any producer, and Europe makes no exception for that, those are multi-year and probably decades projects over time. What's important is to make sure that the projects can evolve over time, can incorporate new technologies and build up the next generation of capabilities. And this is where I think the industry is capable of delivering this. Do we need to be more agile as the customer, as the industry? Certainly, yes. But I think it is sometimes we have to maybe distinguish those projects where we need to be very fast in developing the technology for literally today, and those much longer term commitments which are building up on R&D, on the future. And when you design, whether it's a fighter jet or a air combat environment, or whether you design a naval platform that will be in service in 30 years from now, what is the most critical part is to allow its evolution over time and all of that. And that is of course very demanding in terms of cooperation.
Klaus, you talked about an internal market for defense products. Again, we're sort of running into here, we're hearing the issue of who makes the decisions and how you get countries to coordinate. So if there is success in creating more of an internal market on defense, who should be in the driver's seat for those big defense projects? Is it national capitals? Does the EU play a role? How do we ensure that this sort of happens successfully?
Yeah, you see, this cooperation, coordination, that's the method how we have been doing things up to now. But I don't think they have been very successful. There's a recent paper out by POLITICO and Guntram Wolf on procurement in Germany, and the answer is 50% goes just to German companies, 35% to companies which are co-owned by Germans, 15% to the US, and 0.5% to the European Union. I don't know whether the figure is right, I'm not a scientist, but that's what they say, and they have a procurement tracker, which is live tracking the procurement done by all the states. So that's why I think we need to change of method. We need a market, we need to open up for market. We should have European procurement, also in the defense sector, because probably we will need it. And when I listen to people from the German Ministry of Defense, they don't have very polite words to say about their French colleagues. And when you listen to French people from the Ministry of Defense, they don't have very polite words to say about the German colleagues. So I think we are coming to the end of this kind of things, because simply we need speed, and that is not producing speed. We are too expensive, we are too slow, and we are producing too small numbers. We are not scaling. Yes, we can speak about Gripen, but how many Gripen are delivered every year? We're in the single digit, if I know this correctly. We don't have this luxury anymore. We are, as it has been said, we are living in kind of pre-war times. We hope not, but all the indications are. So I think we need a quantum leap, and that would then not be about coordination. That would be about the market.
And I'm interested in getting a sense of where America fits into this. Traditionally, America has supplied more than half of Europe's defense purchases have come from the States. But a lot of what we're seeing with EDIP, with the SAFE program that the EU has put together, there's a very strong focus on nurturing and pumping that money into European companies. Does Europe still need American companies? And is there a political risk in the era of Donald Trump of actively working to exclude American companies from these procurement deals inside Europe that Washington will retaliate?
You're
in the hot seat,
yes.
so yeah.
Okay, first of all, it's absolutely correct that we have to find a European way. But the reality is that, of course, the next years we need the input of the United States. But we could make the difference, and I know there are many, many even big US companies who are really nervous now because they realize that there are many countries, many companies who say, okay, we are really willing to find a European way to become more independent, not complete independent. This is, I think, I think it's the right way. But if you ask me now, yes, we need the abilities from the US still. And Donald Trump, he knows it. Of course he knows it, but I think the reality shows that how important it is to become independent, because you could see what happens in Ukraine. So there are so many, I mean, the United States, they have everything. But you know, when I was studying, I mean, it's 45 years ago, they have discussions in the United States about about space, and not only in a good way space. What could happen if? And nobody in Europe was really thinking about, hey, what could happen? So you know what I mean? We are nearly 30, 40 years back. So it's a possibility now to become more independent, but anyway, for the next years, we need also components from the United States.
I think there are two things there. I mean, first, with regard to US policy, we have to recognize that, first of all, the US is not a gigantic Walmart or Deleuze that is available where you can find everything tomorrow. There are delivery times, there is competition with other markets. So, you know, it's not as if there was this off-the-shelf, you know, this notion that we buy off-the-shelf from America because it takes time to produce in Europe is misleading, because it takes time to produce in the US as well. And that is a fact for today for existing equipment. Second thing, the US will remain, the US defense companies and defense equipment will remain part of European security for the foreseeable future, if only because there are many European countries that are wedded to major European American products, and that will last for years ahead. Thirdly, the US, and we have to recognize that, not only because of Trump and political reasons, but the US defense industrial base is struggling to meet simultaneously a US demand, including a rebuilding of US capacity, and that's the priority of the Pentagon, the demands of US allies in the Indo-Pacific and in the Middle East, and European demands. And I don't know where we stand in this list of priorities. So we have to be aware of that, because this is not as if it was very straightforward and it suffices to sign a check and you get what you want. On top of that, I think it is also fair as Europeans to recognize that we need to be doing much more by ourselves to be able to meet the requirements of our forces, to build up this capacity. And on this, I'm extremely confident that the European industry is absolutely capable of delivering 99% of the capabilities that we need. We are not behind the curve on that. We have very capable companies. We have very smart startups all over Europe in the defense field that can deliver this. So based on this, we need to really identify where we want to continue to cooperate with the US because it makes sense, where there are some legacy projects that will continue. And at the end of the day, you know, when you look at EU regulation, and I hear and understand the fear of some American companies, but when you look at it, nothing is preventing the procurement by national defense ministries of US equipment. The whole debate revolves around where does EU money go, and that is bit of a no-brainer, as the US would say. The US taxpayer money goes to the US, to US companies. So for me, it's a sort of fairly simple fact. The fact that, okay, you want on very urgent requirements or specific requirements to create a little room for maneuver on this, why not? But the reality is that the debate seems to focus very much on the EU regulation, when the EU regulation is only shaping a small portion of the market by comparison with what's done domestically and that remains. Nobody's forbidding anyone to choose an American product if they want to. But I would really suggest that it's important for the Europeans to grow their capabilities. And if I may end on one last thought, I would say especially in the domain of critical enablers, where the dependencies are the strongest. So this is where the Europeans, when it comes to command and control, space, airborne surveillance, you name it, we really need command and control. We need to be on top of our game, because this is where the dependencies are the strongest, I'm afraid.
Klaus, what's your thought on the American dimension?
If I take the same paper, I hope it's a good paper by POLITICO and others, they are saying that they don't find in their procurement tracker, they don't find these American figures. The figure for Germany was 15%. The figure for France and even for Poland was not so. Poland was higher, but then came in South Korea. So the real issue seems the procurement to European Union countries. And the figures for the US seem to be exaggerated in the debate, so maybe we don't have a real issue there. I think the real issue is not the US. The real issue, how are we procuring among ourselves outside the national arena? And there, this figure they have at least of 0.5% for Germany is absolutely striking. But I agree fully with Camille. We have the possibilities in Europe. We just have to use them. But when we have a look at how much is being built up in capacity, the one company who has really built up capacity in advance is Rheinmetall. They have more than 40% of their additional staff. The other companies are between +10 and -10%. So we are not yet creating the capacities we need to fulfill the needs we have in the military.
And what's your take on the 150 billion euro SAFE program? Is very strongly geared towards joint procurement, that there's this push to, among European countries, the UK, Canada, maybe South Korea, maybe Turkey will be in there as well. But the idea is that the countries will be buying together to cut costs and to become more efficient. Is that what do you think of that program? And is that a sensible approach?
I think it's great. It's exactly what we needed. In the absence of an internal market, we need to create incentives that some countries are cooperating. And honestly, the debate we are having about the US would never have about Europe. So we should do this with self-confidence. We need to build up our own capacities. The European Commission has been doing a lot now, also in the support of startups. 131 billion in the next MFF foreseen for defense or defense-related expenditure. And this 150 billion now in SAFE, they give the possibility for the next European Council to discuss and hopefully decide on very precise cooperation projects.
What's your thought on that?
SAFE is very focused on immediate requirements and enabling budget decisions by countries that are, by the way, the allocation of the funding from that perspective is pretty precise in the sense that it benefits those countries that need additional loans and additional borrowing to be able to meet their demands. So I think SAFE is a very good tool from that perspective, and incentivizing joint procurement is also a smart way in that particular context. I think the interesting thing is to see, and I think this is an ongoing conversation with the Commission, is to see, okay, where will the Commission position itself? It is not, we're going to have very expanded defense budgets in Europe. That is a fact. So essentially defense budgets are going to double, and probably procurement is going to more than double across Europe. From that perspective, what the Commission is doing is only a fraction of that. So where can the Commission make a difference to facilitate and encourage cooperation? What's the governance of that? And I think I think there are lots of things to be refined there, because part of the requirements come from the NATO arena, part of the requirements, those who buy remain the national defense ministries. So how do we make that system work and be efficient for the customer and and to deliver a bigger bank or euro, if I may put it this way? And that's the joint challenge that we have to face.
Mary Agnes, what's your take on SAFE and that approach to trying to bring more coordination to arms purchases?
It's really a great chance now to start. A little bit late, but I hope not too late. And it's really a chance even for smaller countries. And this is the idea, not only for the big one. I mean, if you see the big one in big countries, it's not a question to find money, but for the smaller countries. And again, it's very important for smaller countries because they have to explain their public what's going on. And if the public realized that to invest in military equipment, it's not because we are looking and, you know, happy, wow, there is war, so that it's important to protect people. And on the one hand and on the other hand, there are new jobs, new possibilities, so it's really important that we find a way working together. Let me say, I'm a little bit optimistic, and I think in these times it's a lot.
We're almost out of time, so I'm going to ask one question with a one-word answer, please. Are we doing this fast enough to fend off a potential Russian threat? So we'll start with Klaus.
Only if the US remain reliable, which we don't know.
Agnes?
We have to speed up, absolutely. No discussions. Okay, sorry, second word.
Of course, we have to speed up, but I think we also have to recognize that we have a window of a few years, and this is where we need to speed up, and this is what the military commanders are telling us.
Super. Thank you very much to the panel, and I think really sort of chewing into a crucial issue which we'll be talking about for many, many years to come, because I don't think this threat that we're facing is going to go away at any time soon. Please stay seated, and I'd like to invite Victor Jack to the stage, and he'll be monitoring the next panel, which is a policy spotlight discussion, Powering Europe. Thank you.